Unsolved Crimes newspaper, as a response to KAVALYER civil society organization, within the framework of a struggle against religious extremism, presents.
So, freedom of religious belief is really one of our hot topic on top of our agenda. It has been like that for about 20 years now.
Willy Fautre, Belgium, Brussels. Director of Human Rights Without Frontiers International, member of European Union Fundamental Rights Agency, member of European Platform Against Religious Intolerance and Discrimination.
FECRIS is a group of anti-cult organizations that tries to fight against the new religious movements in particular. The initiative was mainly taken by former members of such religious organizations. And they try to spread some sort of public panic about those new religious movements, and they were quite successful in the 1990s and also, I would say, the first decade of this century, because of the dramatic events that took place in a number of countries like France, Switzerland, Canada, United States, and so on. And so they were really quoted by the media, and in various countries, including in Belgium and Western Europe. And of course, as they could sell some sort of horrific stories, some dramatic experiences that some had in those new religious movements, they were heard quite largely in the last decade of the last century and the first decade of this century. And this was also an incentive, in a sense, for governments to put in place a number of, let's say, cult observatories or sect observatories, like the Mills in France, followed by the Neveev in Belgium, the CIA, also in Germany and in Austria. It's mainly in those four countries that they were rather successful with their campaigns, as they were followed by the government. Two French-speaking countries, very close, I would say, culturally and ideologically to each other, like Belgium and France, and the same with the two German-speaking countries, Austria and Germany.
So, are there any organizations that opposite FECRIS in the world?
Yes, a number of human rights organizations, but not that many, are really fighting the propaganda, the lies that are spread around by FECRIS. Ours is one of them, but there are some others, also some individuals, lawyers, are fighting against FECRIS because it damages the image of some religious movements that are abiding by the law in the countries where they exist. I think of Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, and other movements that are totally peaceful and respecting the rule of law. So the way we fight against FECRIS is by denouncing the lies that they spread around, but also by defending a number of movements that are falsely accused of all sorts of illegal or sometimes criminal activities, and these are again lies. So we wrote a number of brochures in the past about some movements like the Sahaja Yoga, about Jehovah's Witnesses, about the Raelians, the Unification Church, the Soka Gakkai, and so on, just from a purely human rights point of view and from a legal point of view, and analyzing what were their teachings, if they had been condemned or not by courts in their own countries, and quite often those accusations were spread around by FECRIS were absolutely groundless. But you know, the stories are interesting for journalists, and for about 20 years they have been, unfortunately, they have been successful. But now there are other events coming to the surface and that are much more interesting for journalists and the media. It's jihadism, radicalization, the alleged threat posed by Islam, and so on. And so they are now, I would say, rather neglected. They have not changed their discourse. They are almost unheard wherever they try to get their message through. For example, at the OSCE, every year there is an annual meeting in Warsaw in September, October. I've been in Warsaw every year in the last 20 years, I must say, making statements to defend a number of religious groups, minority or not. And in the last few years we have seen figures that suddenly appeared on the scene in Warsaw, denouncing globally with inaccurate accusations and data, the cause, the danger that they represent to security, to the family, to the country, and so on. And I must say that they have never been successful with that sort of message, and everybody has realized that they were absolutely groundless, those accusations. And Dvorkin was there. Dvorkin was there several years ago. It was the first time I was in physical contact with him. That guy looked absolutely crazy. He was running around in the whole in the room where there was that high-level meeting, taking pictures of those who were criticizing a number of countries like Russia, for example, but also defending some religious minorities. And I had a document at that time in which I was accusing him, and I didn't know before that conference that he would be present. And I put that on the table, I displayed my documents on the table, as many other human rights organizations, and somebody saw him taking all my papers and putting them in the paper basket. And then I had a second physical contact with him, indirectly I would say, when in Brussels. A few years ago I organized a conference at the European Parliament about the misuse of the law on extremism in Russia, and quite by chance he was in Brussels at that time. He registered to attend the conference, and I knowing that the guy, that he would make a lot of trouble, and so I had the power at that time to prevent him from getting to the Parliament. He was absolutely furious. There was a complaint that was lodged by the Russian embassy in Brussels that one of their prominent citizens had been denied the access to the European Parliament because of me. It made headlines in the Interfax agency in Russia, and so on. You might still find it if it's not deleted. And so my meetings with him, I would say, have always been conflictual. And so I investigated his life. I tried to investigate. And so what I could find out, but I'm not pleased, I'm not satisfied with what I found out, is that apparently, according to what he says, because what's the reality between what he says and what is real is another matter, he said he was a Jew when he was living in the Soviet Union. And as a Jew, refusing, he could leave the country, went to Israel, and then from there to the United States. But other people who were not Jews in the Soviet Union said they were Jews. And that's how they could leave the country. In the US, so he worked for Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. He became Orthodox, and then after the fall of communism, so he went back to Moscow, and now he's very close to, let's say, to the Kremlin and to the Orthodox Church, and he's one of the propagandists of some parts of the Orthodox Church against new religious movements. I found one of his speeches in Odessa on a video in a church. I bought a video from him. So he is present everywhere in the former Soviet Union. I know that he made a lot of publicity as well against cults in Kazakhstan, in Armenia, and also in other countries, probably in Central Asia as well. So he's a propagandist against competitors to the Orthodox Church. I wonder, who is that guy? What is his origin? Who were his parents? Where were they living? What was his life under the Soviet Union? And that is a blank page in my research. Mm-hmm. So I would like someone who can speak and read Russian to discover more information about his life, his real life.
You know, very interesting fact that in Russia, near Alexander Dvorkin, we see one person. So his name is Alexander Neveev. He is a psychologist. You know about him?
I've heard his name, yes.
He emailed me, and yes, he wrote me that I shouldn't defend the right of my clients, that I shouldn't do this, and he even emailed that I come to Moscow and he will save me, I emailed him that no, thank you, I don't need your help, I don't need your services, so everything is okay. So it was the real fact. So how do you think such a people as Alexander Neveev, so the person who is not a specialist in the area of religions, who has no specific education in this area, and who is simply psychologist, so can this person be an expert in area of sects and destructive cults? How do you think?
No, absolutely not. No, because the starting point, the first starting point that is not correct is to make a distinction between religion and sects or cults. If they come, if they see a client in such a perspective, then it's already wrong. And then being a psychologist without any knowledge about comparative studies concerning religions, any experience in the field, does not make them at all experts in this regard. And what could they say? What could they try to do? To ask the person to recount his conversion to another religion. It's a fundamental individual freedom. When people are adults, they choose the religion that they want, or they don't want to be religious, they want to be atheist. It's also their right. It's protected by the international instruments. So the psychologists have nothing to do with that sort of, it's not even a problem. It's intrusion in the private life and the conscience of someone. Does not choose to go and see a psychologist because she has a problem with regard to a specific religion or change of religion. If it is a sort under coercion that that person is brought to a psychologist, then it's totally wrong. And I would say it's not moral or ethical for a psychologist to play that sort of game.
So maybe we can say that it is not a professional.
It's not professional, so certainly not. Yeah, no, he's exercising some activities that are not related to his professional expertise.
How the person or organization can protect themselves from fuckeries or from such a kind of people as Alexander Dvorkin and Alexander Neveev? What should they do?
Yes. Yeah, there is one yeah, that's a very, very interesting question. Because, for example, in Belgium and in France, until the 1990s, there was not that culture among religious groups, whether minority or majority, I would say, to go to court, to defend themselves, because they were not attacked by anybody. So it's because they were attacked that they had to think how to defend themselves. So they tried to answer the media using the right of answer, but they were usually not successful at all. So some went to court, but you need money, of course. You need to pay the lawyers, and it's only I would say, the big organizations like Scientology and Jehovah's Witnesses, they could afford that because they have a lot of lawyers around the world, and through the cases that they defend, in fact, that they contribute to the promotion of freedom of religion or belief for all, not only in their own specific case. We were heard by the OSCE, we were heard at the United Nations, we were heard at the European Parliament, and so that's how we progressively defended, I would say, the image and the reality of some movements that were unfairly and unjustly persecuted and defamed, labeled, because that had a lot of catastrophic consequences for the members of those groups. In cases of divorce, they were deprived of the custody of their children, they were denied promotion, they were fired because, oh, it's a member of a totalitarian sect, they divide families, and so on and so on. So there was a lot of human damage that was caused by the campaigns of fakeries and others, and the media and the state institutions monitoring or criticizing, persecuting sometimes those minority religions.